afternoon. I'm Shivani Wazir Pasrich, and being the director of the Study School, I'd like to welcome you all to the Study School's Stay Connected and Learn series. These are especially for parents, definitely for teachers, and for students who want to see what lies ahead. Well, today's topic for the webinar is Raising Champions, Is There a Formula? Over the last many weeks through lockdown, we've had a number of webinars where we've talked about various things, right from technology, how much is too much to read or not to read, what should be on children's plates. But today the topic is exceptionally relevant, and especially the concept of who a champion is. Is a champion an athlete? Well, if that's the case, we have them right here. Is a champion an entrepreneur, someone who excels in their field, especially a first generation entrepreneur? We have those two. Is a champion someone who makes a difference to society and helps others? Increasingly, the perception for that seems to be something that we just take for granted. But to my mind, those are the champions that really are the ones worth raising, because they change not just their future or the prestige or pride factor of a nation, they change the fabric of a nation. And therefore, what is a champion? And how does one raise that champion that excels? We have with us four wonderful speakers today. I'm going to introduce them and have them say a bit. It doesn't mean that we haven't introduced the others. I'll just go step by step. So I'm first going to introduce Dr. Anurag Batra, who is the editor-in-chief and chairman of BW World and Exchange for Media. So here's our champion who's really from the business world, but he wasn't always there. As per his own your own admission, Anurag, you once tried for the NDA and actually did things that were quite out of the box. So I'd like to welcome you.
Thank you so much.
And
I did clear NDA, but I think God had a different destiny for me.
Well, your father was the principal of a college, your mother an educationist, but you went on to become a first generation entrepreneur and one who really has brought a 4-decade-old name into focus in a way that is truly unique. Well, here's someone with us who did clear the NDA. Colonel Rajesh Pattu was the commandant of the 61st Cavalry, and he has represented India in successive Asian Games. He's a 3 times bronze medalist in equestrian eventing, and right from Thailand to Busan to, where was the third place, Pattu? Doha. And so really he has been a great ideal, both in terms of a professional, an army man, and an equestrian. Welcome.
Thank you, Shivani.
And I'd like to now introduce Manavjeet Singh Sandhu, who needs no introduction. He's our Olympian over and over again. He represented us in Rio, in London, in Beijing, and even before that. He's a Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna awardee and an Arjuna awardee. And how many people can boast of having 2 Arjuna awardees on one panel? But we have Rajesh Pattu also, who's an Arjuna awardee. And Manavjeet Singh Sandhu is the world record holder in trap shooting as world #1, when in 2006 he won his gold medal. But I can't say his gold medal because he's won many gold medals. So Manav, welcome.
Thank you, Shani. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to welcome Manisha Pattu. She is our Asian Games silver medalist in tennis in 2002 and 2004. After she took retirement from active sport, she went on to work with the Mittals, and they set up a very special body that enabled sports people to excel, including Abhinav Bindra, who went on to win India's first gold Olympic medal. She is now with JSW, and they work together through their Institute of Excellence to help sports people in track and field, in boxing, in judo, and she's on the lookout to see who the next champion will be. Welcome, Manisha.
Thanks, Shivani, but I want to add that Manav was also one of our kids.
Oh, well, that I didn't know. Well, speaking of kids, and since this whole Speaking of kids, and since this session is all about kids, Manisha and Pattu have more than their love for sport in common. They have a son called Ishan. So tell us, you've been sports people, and how important has it been for you to identify that same love for sport in your child?
Well, I mean, I think that we didn't ever force it on him. And I think, as Anurag was stating earlier, being a champion is not restricted to the sport field. But I do believe that kids, when they kind of gravitate towards things, they're always around, and very rarely do we have kids who have already an innate passion that they kind of show early on. In our case, we are always doing something in the outdoors. We're always doing something with exercise and sport, and there's so many athletes in our lives. So Ishan has kind of gravitated naturally towards, and it's been very, very organic in terms of what he does. So I still haven't kind of pushed him towards one sport yet. I think that it's better that he, dabbles in a lot of things and kind of finds a passion for himself within the space to go forward.
So that's a child who's been given a free hand to develop his interests and his body in terms of fitness, and then a call to be taken later. Manavjeet, I'd like to ask you, your son Amir is 9. So is Ishan, incidentally. So we have all these wonderful sports people with 9 seems to be, not 7, but 9 is the lucky number right now. So Manavjeet, what about Amir? Have you instilled sportsmanship and a love for sport in him as a very deliberate measure right now?
I mean, that's good point. I find a lot of times the parents get a little focus on the specialization part of the sport. We see picture at the young age, capture sportsmanship, like I said, the love of sport. What needs to be communicated other than overwhelming desire to start specializing at the youngest possible. So far, Mayor's will be surprised to know he still hasn't developed his love for shooting as a okay. He's more of a cricketer than a shooter. If you ask him to be when he grows, he would say a cricketer. So that's something trying to curb. They other teachers love playing and physical and getting out, and is also from electronic.
So Manav, I'm going to make a request of you because I think we can't hear you. So if you can log in through your telephone and keep it horizontally, and then perhaps we'll be able to hear you better. We'll come right back to you. Anurag, your kids, are they going to be entrepreneurs? Is it something that you think is hereditary? A sports person's child becomes a sports person. You yourself have broken out from the mold. So tell us about Prasann, your son who's 12, and Pratna, your daughter who's 16.
So I'll tell you, first of all, thank you, Shivani. One is when you come to these initiatives, you learn something, it triggers a thought process, and you meet new people, especially to meet, Olympians and to meet people who won a medal at the Asian Games is itself a pleasant experience, and I hopefully will get to know them better. And I just discovered that Manav is from Lawrence School, Sonar, and I have lots of friends from there. But coming back to will the children follow what their parents did? First of all, I want to say I'm very clear that not necessarily. Also, parents, especially young parents, face more challenges than their own parents when it comes to children's discipline. The idea of raising your child the same way that you were raised is a very difficult idea, especially if you've turned out okay, because the times are very different. So I'd like to say, one is how do you define who's a champion? Second is that children will, especially today's generation, has so many choices. You can be a chef, you can be an author, you can be a sports person, you can be whatever you want to be. You can be a, Manisha was referring to e-gaming. You can be an e-game aficionado and do well. So I think it's how you define. But I would say if children take up sports and they do well in sports, one, it keeps them mentally fit. Second, it keeps them physically fit. And third, it instills discipline, which is, I think, the most important quality for achieving anything. Right? So if you did sports early, it will help you whether you take sports as a career or not. And, the art of discipline is a tricky one. Parents with the best intention, are sometimes overbearing on their children. So I would say, I would define a champion as someone who's constantly making efforts to improve, and you're encouraging him or her, Second, a champion who's sincere, whose values are good. And third, I'd like to say a champion is who is not worried about failure. So if you create these three qualities in your kid, and kids see, observe, and learn. No amount of preaching works on them. If they see the parents doing the right things, or and they pick up different things from their parents. And Shivani, I jokingly said to you, when you asked me, is there a playbook? I said, yes, marry the right person, right? So, in my case, honestly, as I told you, my wife has more influence on my kids. And, there was a point, maybe 5-7 years back, I was jealous of it. I'm no longer jealous. I'm actually happy seeing my kids turn out the way they turn out. Your Neeti is very disciplined. So, I think it's the kids seeing their parents. What do they stand for? What do they do?
To teach by example is certainly the most effective way to do it.
They pick up subconsciously. They pick up things.
That's true.
It happens. I mean, Prarthana is extremely sincere. If I had to use one word to be, like if she says to Shivani that I'll send you mail by 12, she will send it before 12, maybe 11:50. And
so it's not surprising that she's going to be a wonderful author and her first book is already in the publishing.
Yeah, we know she's writing one. I mean, how well it will do. We'll see how well it comes out. But she's making an effort. And in life, making an effort is the most important thing. The rest, everything follows.
Definitely. So coming back to our topic, which is raising champions. So everyone thinks there are different types of champions. You raise them to succeed and then they do really well. But being champions yourselves, you must have seen that often that success is not the dependable thing. Failure is more often than not the bedrock of success. So how do you, Karnapattu, prepare your son to excel and yet to be able to accept if he doesn't do as well as he had planned to?
Well, Shivani, honestly, we don't think so much, right? We're just having fun. We're just teaching Ishan the values, and we are, making him do what he wants to do. So there is no such thought process that we are going to channelize him in a certain way. I mean, of course, we want the best thing for us is our efforts are for him to become a better human being. Whether he becomes the Olympic gold medalist, I don't know. And honestly speaking, it does not matter. As long as he becomes a good person, and as long as he's happy, as long as he's fit, I think that's what more important than achieving something and compromising on all these other factors. So we are just having fun, and let him do whatever he wants to do, and we're encouraging him to since we both are into sports, and and he also loves sports, so we encourage him to do try out different sports. So this is what's happening right now.
And Manisha, you work with so many sports people. How often is it that the sports person who excels comes from a family of the same sport, a parent who's involved in the same sport?
Well, I mean, I think there are it is not rare to find kids following in the footsteps of their parents in the same sport. So there are I have several athletes whose parents were doing a certain sport and then they've kind of followed in the footsteps. So that is not a rare phenomenon. But I do believe that in today's day and age, the interests of the kids are so different. And I think that there's so many more opportunities available for kids. So their horizons, if you want to say it like that, are a lot wider and a lot, there's a lot more scope for them to choose. And I think as a sports administrator, and going back to your last question, I think that teaching a kid for failure is the way. And this is not anything that's restricted to sport. It's restricted to life. And within life, you're going to have many more failures than successes. And to be able to kind of pick up and then go and keep trying, that is something that I am always working on with my athletes. I'm also working on it with my son. I know he's younger and he hasn't reached the level where there's a lot of pressure on him yet. But when he doesn't do something, we kind of make sure we keep going back and revisiting the thing that he can't do until he can do it. And then, telling him that it was all because of the effort. So you're trying to, there's always underlying lessons from sport which transcend way beyond sport. And that, those are kind of resilience and dedication, and of course discipline and hard work is all the things that you need in life. And I tell everybody I learned more on the tennis court than I did in any school that I went to. So that's the same for pretty much every athlete who kind of takes their journey, and everybody's journey is different. I mean, Manav's journey has taken him all the way to the top. My journey was also a very successful journey. But then there are athletes who stop at a university level and even before, or play only for school. And that is something that still needs to be encouraged, because those are the people and those are the lessons that you're going to learn, that you will always be able to kind of fall back on for the rest of your life.
So Manavjeet, how does a parent help a child not give up on a sport or an accomplishment? It could be, I know Amer is very fond of Kirtan. So does that interest in Kirtan of his die out as he gets older, because suddenly you've got to fit into roles that are predefined for you? How does a parent ensure that a child's interests carry through for a period beyond just the time when it's a must do?
Well, that perhaps is where the mistake maybe is to ensuring. I think we have to create an environment where he feels comfortable simply pursuing his passion, whether that is in sports or whether that is academics or art, music, anything. The idea is to create a unhindered sort of an environment of creativity, environment of motivation, and let him and then gently sort of guide him when he comes to you, not necessarily, because I really do feel, Shivani, the bane today of parenting, the biggest challenge that we all face is the overwhelming urge to specialize, to push our children to be achievers at younger and younger and younger. And that has become such a tremendous pressure, whether it's academic or even for sport. Like, people ask me all the time, is Amer already into shooting? Are you teaching him? And they feel very odd when I tell them that, look, I'm really not even bothered right now. He's too young. Let him just develop his own passion. So that should be I think as a parent, I keep it in the back of my mind as much as possible, not to push for a successful specialization at this stage. Rather, just give him a love for competing, a love for, like Manisha said, sports gives you so much to learn just besides the medals. So, that's what I feel. And I am sure if I create the environment, Amer will pursue his passion all his life.
But did your father do the same thing? Because he was a shooter.
Well, the sports world specifically, Shivani, has changed a lot. And if I may differentiate between traditional sports, like let's say hockey or athletics, which don't require a tremendous amount of infrastructure, you would find that a lot of sportsmen broke away from their traditional family careers and pursued those sports because it is easy to do. If you're a fast runner, all you got to do is you're running fast, and in school you're going to run fast, and in college you're going to run fast, and you'll become an athlete. But something like shooting back in the day was so difficult to just get to a shooting range, just to get a gun, just to get the ammunition, that these were the sports which were more traditionally handed down in the family.
Generations, yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, definitely in my case, it turned out lucky that I was, my dad always felt that, do what you want. And I just decided to get into shooting. So it was luck. I see all around me sportsmen who pursue the same sport as their parents and not doing very well. So there's no given, and it should not be the urge to put the same sport down your child's throat should be curbed, in my opinion.
Because there must be passion first. So the format of our discussion is that we take questions from parents and people who are viewing the show. So we have a question here from Hemant Pasrich. She is a brain gym expert. She works with children who have special needs and has a young, very talented son herself. So she's asking, Dr. Batra, this is for you. How do you identify a child's interest or skill at an early age? And if we know how to do it, then how do we polish those skills, especially during these times of COVID when children cannot be taken out?
So I want to address two more points. I'll come very specific to that. One is I'll send a link to you, and you can send it to Manisha, Manav, and Colonel Pattu. And it's according to me, one of the best writers. It's an article by David Brooks called The Moral Bucket List. It came in the New York Times, and I'll send you a link. And I want to read one para from it. It's a lovely article. he talks about people who are good, who achieve goodness in life. Forget, money and titles and whatever. He says, it occurred to me that there are two sets of virtues, the resume virtues and the eulogy virtues. The resume virtues are the skills you bring to the marketplace. The eulogy virtues are the ones that are talked about at your funeral, whether you were kind, brave, honest, faithful, were you capable of deep love. So I think if you inculcate those in children, they'll automatically, if you're loved, if you're centered, if you're not insecure, you'll automatically do well at life. You'll be nice to people. Second, failure. I think, Manu talked about how some children are trying to follow their parents. See, there is a favorite author of mine called Randy Pausch. He wrote this book called The Last Lecture, and he did a video called The Last Lecture. And he says something beautiful in the book. He says, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So there's nothing in life as failure. Honestly, I have failed in a traditional way at many things, but I've taken it as an experience, and I don't get bogged down for more than 1 day, 1 week, and I'm back to do it. So I think we have to encourage children to get these experiences. Now, coming to our question, see, I would say success or achievement is a function of opportunity. In my view, it's not about being the brightest, the hardest working. All that will help. But if whether you get an opportunity or not, if your boss gives you more opportunity, you will automatically get better. So I think the way to do it is give exposure and opportunity to children to kind of sample various things. I'll give you my daughter's example. 4 years back, she said, I want to be a chef. I want to be a pastry chef. And I was kind of depressed for 2 days, but that's okay. And she told me, why are you talking like that? Then she said, I want to be a musician. And she's now doing her music well. We got her enrolled into the Thai young entrepreneur plan because, that's a career I want her to take. And my wife is also an entrepreneur. And she loved it. So whether she will become an entrepreneur or not, her life skills improve. We clearly don't know. She's in class 11. I think in a year we'll know what she wants to do. But I think parents can give opportunities, exposures, and kids will naturally gravitate and be always there. And I want to, I have whatever little I've achieved is because I read a lot in life and I read a lot in life. But, I just wanted to read another piece, maybe in the next question. It is about the power of positive reinforcement. We shouldn't punish kids.
We should or we shouldn't? What did you say?
We should not.
Punishment
Punishment doesn't work in these times.
Okay, I'm going to ask Pattu about this. Punishment doesn't work. How does one instill discipline without the punishment?
No, you don't punish, but yeah, you must tell them what is correct and what is not correct. But punishing in like the way we used to be punished, of course not in today's day and age.
You have to give positive reinforcements.
So would you have been able to be the champion you are in terms of an equestrian champion had you not had punishments?
Yeah.
So many rounds, so many this, so many that.
That
being an army person.
That comes. That is not punishment. That's not punishment. If you
let's reword that. Let's call it consequences.
No, when you do something which is not correct, you have to amend that. You have to change that. Right? But that's not punishment. I don't think so. Punishment is the right word.
So I think.
Tell me. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying then that the panel unanimously agrees with Dr. Batra's theory that punishment is not the way forward. So what is? That's the question. Like you're raising champions. What is the formula?
Shivani, if I may just interject quickly. I think, that's coming back to the fundamental issue is of, promoting kids and telling them, like I said earlier, to push them down a path is not what we should do. But however, there is a definite need, in my opinion, to stop them from certain paths. Like, for example, that should be more the focus of what should a parent stop rather than what a parent should just simply encourage. Now, for example, these days on Netflix, there's an amazing documentary on basketball. Jordan is everywhere. So if my son told me, watches that and gets inspired, and he says, Dad, I'm going to be a basketballer. one line of thought would be, okay, just let him follow his passions and let him be. But but my experience in life tells me that, look, he doesn't have the height, for example. He may not have the genetics, for example. So I should be in that. Then if that may be a time for a parent to step in and say, look, and guide him that, look, son, maybe this may not be the best career for you because you're not suited for that. So similarly, a parent, I feel, must, not only guide, focus on where to send them, but also focus on where not to send them, because children pick up inspiration from all. When I was a kid, maybe I wanted to be a race car driver, but now I know I don't have to. Now I know that would have been a bad decision. So that sort of a guidance is also necessary, perhaps.
So that's very substantial to know the do-nots, not just the do's. Meenakshi Pahuja, who's the head of sports at Lady Shri Ram College, says, what's lacking in making champions in India? Manisha?
Is that for me? For Manisha.
Manav can take it.
No, Manisha, go ahead. You're the administrator.
I have a point of view, and I listen to the sports people and as a business person, because
We'd love to hear that. Manisha, after your point, then Dr. Anurag can
I'll try and keep it really, really brief. And I think that what is lacking has changed consequently over the last 10 years. So there are certain steps forward in Indian sport which are to the positive, and many people don't highlight that. But Manav will be able to tell you that from what he even sees, the youngsters in today's generation are very, very different than when we were growing up playing any sport. So what is the problem and why we are still not at that level everywhere else? I think it's a cultural issue. I just think it takes time for sport to kind of infiltrate into a culture and a DNA of somebody. So if you go to Australia, everybody's playing and everybody's competing from a very, very young age, and they use that as a recreation. I mean, that's one avenue of recreation. Whereas for the Indian community, that's still not the case. It is changing. It is changing a lot, and it has changed a lot. But I think if you ask me for one brief point, what it would be, that would be it.
So, Dr. Batra, you are an influencer, you're a journalist, you're a TV presenter, you're quite an inspiration. What do you have to say?
Manav, I have some friends from Sanar, and one of my happiest memories, my top 10 memories in life, one of the most happy memories is, when my first child was born, is Prarthana and then Prasan's birth.
Prarthana was the answer to your prayers.
Yes.
And Prasan, he who brought you lots of joy.
I like that. But I know Subroto Malik, you know Subroto? He's a Sanarian.
Yeah, correct.
So he and Raga, who's a Dosto, in 96 took me to Sanar for the first time. I went to Gyani's at Abba, I went to Alicia, I met the brothers, they're Subroto and Raga's friend. I've forgotten the watch guys. Maxima, Purewals, right? And I played a cricket match on the old Bans. And then I made in the upper Bans, whatever it's called,
Yeah.
I'm not a Saranian. And then I played a football match on the lower Bans. It was raining. That's one of my happiest moments. I'm in the top 10. And, it was such a careful. Now, somebody like Subroto, who's such a great cricketer. I mean, I took a catch in the first slip and I was rubbing my hands for 15 minutes. He could have gone on to become a sports person, right? He could have been in the Indian cricket team. He was that good. Now, my view is the reason we don't get sports upfront is because, one, we don't put enough money in sports. We are not long-term. Sports is a 10-year, 20-year project. It's not.
Are you saying that as parents, we need to allocate a greater budget in our budgeting
not
sphere?
just as parents, as a country?
Yes.
And more sports people should be.
But since we are gearing up more to a parental audience, what can the parents do in this sphere? Is it that when you make your allocation of when you aspire, my child will do a college degree and I'll put away this amount? Is it that you will say, no, instead I will make sure that there is a facilities that are offered?
I think, Manisha ji, now I remember 18, 20 years back, Harish Pal Singh, do you know HP Singh, Rishi? He had actually talked to me about you. I'll come to parents. I think sports need money. If you have to send your child, if you have to get the right coach for your child. So there are 4 things the parents can do. Not for you and other parents on this panel, but a lot of parents that I know, including me, I don't consider sports a profession. I should, but I'm confessing that it will come lower in my because I'm not a spokesperson. And I'm not being able to motivate my kids to take sport. So most parents don't.
Sport should never start off as a profession. I mean, I don't think any parent should ever think of a sport as a profession, but something as a hobby that needs to be a part of every child's life. And this has,
so
if the child continues on, that's fine, but it should always start off as something that was fun.
You know, Manisha, sorry, Anurag, this entire sports and profession link is only due to cricket. Because, you know, so, you know, we have to de-link profession from sports. None of us are advocating that. That's become the career choice. We're advocating for the benefits of sport, irrespective of the money. So the idea is to create a sportsman in your family. You could be a sporting accountant. You could be a sporting CA. You could be a sporting lawyer. So the idea is not the money. We must de-link sports from the money part.
Yeah, but there is money needed. See, if you want sports to grow,
that is more a political discussion. Here we're going to focus on
parents need to create a corpus for their kids. See, if you need a coach, I don't know. I have a senior from engineering. His son went to France. He's a very good footballer, right? I mean, he spent a lot of money on. You need money for training. So we need money in sport. We need more companies, brands to come and patronize sports people, even when they're not big, when they're kind of coming up. And
essentially what you're saying is, as a parent group, as a school group, as an infrastructure all around, we need to keep identifying talent. Anika Kalha is asking, how does one balance sports and studies? So Manav, you talked about sports not necessarily being something that goes on to be a profession to start with. It should be a passion. So this passion can overtake and academics can suffer. So how does one?
Well, Shivani, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so well, you know, one thing is there's nothing called a perfect balance. A balance could be even, I think even 80-20 is a balance. So in my case, as far as I was concerned, my balance was there, but it was not the perfect balance that perhaps my parents wanted it to be. So, you know, what would be a balance? A balance would be balance to your best, you know, what your capabilities are. If I, for example, I'm 80% a better cricketer than I was, than a student, then my balance in my life would be 80% cricket and 20% academics. So the idea is to be able to create a balance that best suits your strengths and your personality and your passion, and that would be your balance. Simply trying to say that, you know, the parent must achieve an equal balance of academics, an equal balance of sport in your life, is perhaps too simplistic and trying to, you know, put them into very rigid concepts. The idea is to create a balance which best suits you. So Anika, I would advise Anika to create a balance for her children. Not even, she has 2 children, so, you know, not even equally amongst them. Let one be balanced in his or her way, and the same for the next.
So Ramandeep Saluja saying her 3-year-old daughter loves balls, and it could be a plastic ball, it could be a professional football. What should they do so that her interest doesn't fade as she grows up? Patu?
Well, she should be encouraged all the time to, the parents should get involved, parents should play with the little girl. And I think it's very important for the parents to get involved with the child and play the sport, whichever sport the kids like. So the kids probably will start enjoying it, and I think that's the way to build up or support your kids in their sports.
So Manisha, for us at the study school, when we had our children physically with us, it was great fun to see them on tricycles and on, you know, playing with balls. And I find that is the kind of environment that people really can grow into spheres of good attitude towards each other, sharing and enjoying outdoors and sport. But here Ruth Ann Rosario is asking, her child doesn't like Zoom lessons and she doesn't like to sit, but she's very unhappy with all of this. So how do you make it work? So in these current times with COVID looming large, what is it that we can do with those children's energies?
Well, I think that there is always things to do in terms of sport, and sport doesn't always have to be in a swimming pool or a riding arena. I mean, Patu and I are both struggling because we don't, the riding club is closed. So, you know, you think outside the box, and you start thinking of things that you can do even within your own house. I mean, you set up little obstacle courses for your kids. You can get them to kind of do things, yoga is a great fun way to spend energy and get the kids flexible at the same time. And then if you can't go down, or if you do have the space, there's bicycling. There's always things that can be done to have some sort of physical activity within even in a small confined space.
So here's
A lot
another
of my
mother.
friends are like making them jump rope and having an obstacle course with different kind of hula hoops and jumping ropes and things like that.
Because children will have that energy, and they do need to sort of step up and do stuff. So Palak Bagga, Noor's mother, is asking that, her daughter has all this energy, and there's this 1 hour lesson which she does, a virtual summer camp with the study school. But then beyond that, it still feels less since she's home all the time, and her time for exploring and experiencing things through venturing out are being curbed in these times. Also, the mother is pregnant, so she's, not necessarily
Limited.
able to keep pace. Yeah. And another point is, how do I shift her eating, drinking habits to being done by me, from being done by me to others at home? She refuses to eat. So essentially, even as a parent, whether it's whatever you're doing, the eating or the sports obstacle things, how does one get a family included in doing this and not just a mother?
The eating is the wrong question to ask Pattu and I, because we have a son who's an extremely picky eater and is not. I mean, I just view it as not being. I mean, you're not going to get a perfect child, so there's always going to be something lacking, and that's one of the things, and we just have to take it in stride. But that being said, for grooming a child, I do believe it's a team effort, just like everything else. I mean, I think every athlete at the highest level will tell you that there was not just one person behind their success, and it's always a group of people. So I do believe that, getting a family to kind of rally behind a child is an important thing. I mean, if the family can be on board with the sport that they do, I do believe even a few words of encouragement from a grandparent or something can go a long way. And it's important to get everybody on the same page while you're kind of raising a child, especially in the Indian houses, which do have a lot of people in them. I mean, there's always some extended family and, people around.
So Anurag, you mentioned that your wife has been,
You talk about my wife, that's okay.
I'm saying your wife has been very key in bringing the kids' hobbies, right from football to music to tabla, to the fore.
Whatever they said, again, it was on Niti's idea, but whatever they said, she enabled it fully.
And what about your family? How did you come into the picture to encourage? And in these times, you as a busy person with a busy career, so you see in every family, there'll be those who are expected to take over the facility providing or the infrastructure creating because they are there. And then there'll be those who are caught up with the larger picture of the world outside. So where does that role shift, and where does the responsibility come to the second party or the fifth party, the parties that are the larger part of the group called the family?
Can I tell you, first of all, I mean, I'm thinking, I'm listening to everyone, and I'm thinking, in my case, I'll be honest, I only work. I do my work, and I'm left to that. And whenever I need it for anything, I show up. Okay? Now, that's the honest bit. I don't do anything, and no, that I rarely do. Okay, let's put it this. I rarely do it. I'm busy working, and whatever needs to be done from my side, I do it with utmost sincerity, and most time it happens. Okay, and so mine is more in terms of, my daughter's writing the book, so create access, read what she's writing. She's starting a YouTube channel. With what I do, with God's grace, it's possible to access anyone in India. So, I'm able to access that. So my role becomes more guiding. Now as they're growing up, as she's looking up at a career, she talks to me, so those are roles I'm doing. But as far as the home and all, I really don't contribute much in the sense of looking after the property, cooking. I don't do anything. That's the absolute opposite. But I'm very involved with my kids. I know what they're doing. I try to support. Like I have to do something for my daughter. I've been running late by a week. 8 p.m. on Sunday is my deadline. Otherwise, she stopped talking to me. So, of course, I will do it. because I get busy with my work. And so I'm saying, I just want to say that as parents and individuals, we all want to be perfect. We want our children to be perfect, because sometimes the goals that we have for ourselves, and some we did, some we didn't, we want to get our children to achieve them, right? In a good way, right? But I don't think perfection is possible, or close to perfection is possible. So I think we have to let go also. I know sports is about perfection. You know, whether you win a silver or a gold is about that little thing, nanosecond or. So I think
Well,
the parents
coming
have
from
to,
a man who says that 8 p.m. on a Sunday is my deadline for my daughter to be with her, coming from someone who gives
She's
that
given me
much
some work.
effort.
So no, she's given me some work to do. I have to read something, I have to connect, I have to see her videos, give her feedback. So I was not able to do it, but I'll do it. I mean, she doesn't have to even follow up when I'm into. But I'm saying sometimes we want our kids to be perfect. I think we have to let go. There's a beautiful book called The Gifts of Imperfection by Dr. Brené Brown. I would encourage all the parents to read it. I promise you, one, you won't get. You stop expecting perfection from everyone. It's good to expect close to perfection. If I said 12 o'clock, I will be there at 12. But, if I'm 1 or 2 minutes late, don't be that hard on me or children. I mean, honestly, some people are so serious that I'm
You're
afraid
talking
to.
to an army man and a
Being punctual is a
sports
great thing. But being
lot who
punctual
are
is a good thing. I'm not.
by the nanosecond. So we are going to ask a question from which is from Prangna Jaggi, Aryan's mum. She's saying that how do I build patience with my child who is not very interested in doing a lot of activities that will help him build hand and motor skills? Sometimes I'm trying very hard to push him, but I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do because I want him to enjoy and I want him to be happy. So coming back to Manisha, what do you think of this? How does one push and yet not push?
Well, I think that I mean, obviously depends on the age of the child, and also a lot depends on the personality of the child. But for the sensitive children, I would always say that you kind of have to turn it into a game, and if turn it into some sort of fun activity, and while trying to achieve the same goals. And so, if she needs, like, even something like a Lego is really good for motor skills for your hands and your hand-eye coordination and putting those pieces together. I know a lot of different young kids who do a lot of Legos and things like that, which helps them in the thinking process. And I know it's not very sport friendly, but even another sport, maybe a sport like those little pool tables that you get. You get them everywhere. They're like more of a board game scenario versus a sport. The key in the kids' lives, I think, is that every kid has a very short attention span, and so you kind of have to maximize it within a very short span of time. And if you can do that, and then do it multiple times a day, similar to like training a dog or a puppy or something like that. So you kind of have to do it revisit that space multiple times a day, but for shorter spans of time. I think that's a more successful model than trying to beat it into them.
Yeah, that's great. And just now coming to the other side, which is we've been talking about sports and excelling in that and how to inculcate in your children with just letting them be or letting them choose and then encouraging them. But where does that, when we were kids, we had a subject called moral science. And you actually had people talking to you about right and wrong. There was a television show in those times called Zara Sochiye. Today, the kids are exposed to so much media where the ethical questions may not be looming as large as the questions for success. Now, Colonel Pattu, you have been on the cover of India Today because in 1997, during the terrible Upar tragedy, you helped rescue people from the fire and risked your own life in the bargain, got the president's special recognition for that. I'm not saying this to say this is something great that you did, which it is, but I'm saying, how does that kind of a value system come in a world where today people will first duck and hide and try and protect themselves and run out first? And how do we make our children feel that way?
Well, Shivani, you can, so the kids, honestly, what I feel is that, till the kid is not a teenager, he is going to actually see his parents, how they behave and how they conduct themselves in every situation. After that, it depends on what his friends and everything. But I think the foundation is made when the kids are listening to you and they actually think that the parents are, your mom is the best and the dad is the best. But they learn a lot of things from their parents. So if you are correct, and if you try to become a good human being, or and you have, I think you will make a good foundation, and it'll be easier for the kid to take it from there, right? That's what I
So
feel.
for
I
me,
think,
when I invited you on this show, it was you not being a sports champion, it was you being a social champion.
today is 13th of June. Upar happened today, 1997. 13th June 1997. Anyway,
What a unbelievable,
yeah.
I can't even call it a coincidence. I would say it was meant to be. We were meant to take this moment on this session to.
So now when we talk about Upahar, right, what I did in Upahar and why I did it, as a child, I have seen, my father was also in the army, right? So I have seen how my father, behaved, or not behaved, in the sense that how he felt that he should help people, right? So I've seen it. So when they say the child, the kids observe, and if you are perfect, I mean, no one is perfect, but if you are doing the right things, the chances are that your kids will do the right things.
And also,
Anurag, you.
Dr. Rajesh, Colonel Saab, also,
Sure.
even if they make mistakes, I have made mistakes, I'm sure all of us make. I think we have to also let the children know very early that it's okay to make mistakes. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
sir.
okay to repeat them. It's not
Absolutely.
okay to repeat
No.
them. And irrespective of whatever happens, we will always be there to support you, and we love you unconditionally. If once kids get that, and I want to give you my children's two examples. About 5 weeks back, I was talking about my daughter to someone who's in publishing and telling her how good she is and you should consider publishing her book. And I said, by the way, Pratna is very good. I wish Prasan was that good. Not knowing that Prasan is listening to my conversation. So after the conversation, my son tells me, hey, Papa, I know you were trying to put Pratna Didi look good, and she's very good, but you don't have to put me down to put Pratna Didi up. I looked at him and I said, this boy is good. I'm just saying, the way he said it to me, and I think so. Children observe parents a lot, and children are wiser than we give them credit for. They know a lot, they keep it inside. I want to tell you one story about Pratna. Pratna is part of her team came second in the Thai Young Business Plan competition. And now they're doing projects, and somebody has to be the CEO, somebody has to be the COO, somebody has to be the CBO. So she's been made the number 3 while she feels she should be number 1. So as parents, we are telling, ask for it. And I told Pratna verbatim, and I said, if you don't ask for it, you don't get it. If you believe you deserve it, you go for it. No, Papa, I can't ask for it. It's okay, I'll be the chief business officer. Now, in a way, I like that. Because she's saying, my friendship with my friends is more important than me being the CEO or the CEO. Now, so the kids actually have lots of good things. They may show it from time to time, and we may observe it. So I think kids are wiser than we think, and they have lots of goodness inside, which is waiting to come out. So Colonel Patu, I didn't know about your Upar thing, but the fact is, what you did in Upar you didn't plan for it. It was a reflex action. It was somewhere subconsciously in your brain that you want to help people. You saw an opportunity and you went in without thinking. So I think it's subconscious programming, what we say to the child every day. So I think the words, I've learned very late in life that words are very important. How you say, what you don't say. Words have more power than anything else can have. So the words you use with your children will ultimately help them become champions, whatever your definition of the champion is.
So when you talk about it wasn't pre-planned, it was pre-programmed. So Manisha, you have actually stepped out beyond and amazingly for even the Paralympic swimmers and other athletes who may not have been normally included in the sphere of the activities of whichever organization you were working with. So I'd like to talk about people with disabilities, children who have limitations, to make children with limitations have limitless access, as in for their dreams to be able to come true within their spheres. How can one enable that as a parent and as a society?
Well, I mean, I think that a physical disability or any sort of disability should not be the hindrance of not encouraging a child to a certain passion. So there are countless stories. I mean, probably the most famous is the guy who ran in the Olympics who had no legs, right? The Blade Runner, as he was called initially. But I mean, if you see even the Indian contingent at the Paralympic Games in Rio, was much, much, much more successful than ever before in the history of the Olympic Games for Paralympians. I think we had 8 or 9 medals. I'm not 100% sure, but so these guys are winning at the world stage. So I mean, it's all about kind of mental toughness, and it's all about the support that you put behind them. So any kind of disability, whether it's physical or it's mental, needs to be taken as a challenge and worked around, rather than using that as an excuse not to put your child in a certain way.
So Manavjit, I want to ask you, is sport a sphere where someone who has a difficulty can actually be channelized and a parent can encourage them to develop a passion where that sport can be a healing and also a crutch that makes them not require a crutch in society anymore?
Yes, absolutely, Shivani. Sports, like we started the discussion, gives you such a variety of advantages and of skills and life skills that a parent must utilize more of sport. Take, for example, discipline. Sport. Parents. One of the main issues we all discuss is how do we discipline our children, whether it's eating, whether it's watching television, various disciplinary activities of everyday life that parents generally struggle with the perhaps unruly children. So I find that sports, helps you, in ways that you cannot simply beyond the physical part of it. So an outdoor activity and a chance for a child to be competitive, a chance for a child to lose at something, and similarly to win. These are issues, life skills that parents must take advantage of. And one thing I'd like to put into this stage is in sports, it's more about it's more about action, what you've done. We live in a world which is very grounded to results, not simply philosophical conversations or thoughts. And so I may think I'm the best, but until I prove it. So that. So I feel that in most homes there is too much emphasis on this on the philosophy of parenting, rather than the actual getting on with it. Like, for example, I think the biggest single most important thing a parent can do is lead by example. Like what Rajesh did, for example, that on that unfortunate day has set an example for his son. He had told him, you must, I will be narrating Rajesh's story perhaps to my son, that the impact will not be there as what Rajesh's son himself would have felt because his father has done it. So action is extremely important, and we must, as parents, lead by example in every way. We tell our child to limit the television. Surely we cannot be sitting in front of the television all day and telling. So similarly with sports, we must, as adults, step out, play a little bit, so that we can set an example for a child.
Absolutely. Our last question for the day is from Chandni Kapoor, that's Neha's mother. She's saying, is it right to make the child do things that the child may not necessarily want to do? And how do I discipline my child to follow my instructions, even when she doesn't want to?
I just want to build on Manav Sandhu's thing. How a child, boy or girl, sees himself determines how they do well. And well is again, each one's definition. But by accepted definition of being healthy, of being disciplined, of having good values, very much depends on how the child. So I say to my child, Prasanna, Pratna, you're very good, you're very responsible, you're very, very disciplined, you're doing well. So the positive reinforcement, when it's actually there, I don't give it in a false way, but when you see it, so how the child sees the power of positive discipline, the positive reinforcement, I think that's very important, without focusing on whether he's got 100%, 90%, whether he became gold medalist. I think how they see, if you help their children see themselves better than they are, I think they'll do okay, rather than begging them low.
Well, Anurag, we're delighted to have BW Education as our partners for this talk on raising champions. Is there a formula? As the study school logs out of this session, I'd like to share the image of a young child who was all of 2 years old. When we were in Golf Links, we used to have a garden where we would have horse riding. And she was horse riding and happily bobbing her head from side to side with many of the other children. And she went on to become India's national champion in equestrian, junior national champion in 2017. So I'm going to ask my team to show that clip if they can. And in the meantime, I will request you all to please share with us one last little tip of parenting as we conclude on this discussion today, which is we all need to give positive enforcement, say you're really good at this, but where does that reality check come? So Manavji, starting with you, I'd like to say, how do you say you're so good at this and yet not give a false sense of belief that I'm the best at this?
Well, I think lead by example, number one. So number two, be more reality oriented rather than simply telling your child you're the world's best and you're the world's best. Let them be more grounded in reality. At the same time, encourage without over encouraging.
But do you have Ishan on the Fabulous Life of Ishan on Instagram? And it's really inspiring because for even my kids who are much older than him, today one of them was taking pictures and saying, look at my abs, because everybody wants to be fit, especially when you see a little kid who can climb ropes and jump over tires and jump down a terrace and land on his feet and be really comfortable. So where does the line come between inspiring with this example and yet keeping Ishan safe from the whole world saying, oh, you're so great, because that's the end of his expansion then?
I think, Shivani, that if you're involved with the child and if you are doing the same stuff with the kid, right? The child is not seeing what's happening in the social media, right? So Ishan has no clue about the fabulous life of Ishan. He's not seeing the views. He doesn't care a damn about the likes or not, whatever. He probably doesn't know even about these things. I think the parents must get involved with the kids and they must have fun. They must have fun. They must have fun. That's the most important thing, right? And like Manisha said, if you make things, in a fun way, it will be good for the family, and the chances are that the kid might like to pursue sport, in a more serious way.
So Anurag, I'm going to ask you, your kids are older and aware of social media. So where does that platforming come where children have a belief in themselves? 80% of the people said above average. Now, looking logically, it's not possible for 80% to be above average. So human beings do have a tendency to overrate themselves. Is that what gives them hope?
First of all, I am an MBA. First of all, I'm an MBA, so I'm much below average. That's my column, the title of my column.
You're also on the board of MDI.
Yeah, because at the least where I got out.
You are the alumni.
Yeah, luckily, first time in 15 years, the alumnus on the board, so I'm quite happy about that. And the day I went to my parents' home, who live in Gurgaon. Right now, they live with me in Gurgaon. But it was a proud moment with my parents' recognition. But coming to my daughter has challenged me to find her on Instagram, and I haven't been able to find, because she doesn't want me to see what she's doing. But my daughter and son tell everything to my wife, so I know that she knows, and she will guide them. I just want to say what I said. Speak to your children as if they are the wisest, kindest, most beautiful and magical human beings on earth. For what they believe is what they'll become. So if you just do that, and Colonel Pattu said one thing, which I believe, that your children need your presence more than presents. So spend more time with the children whenever you can, without feeling guilty. I mean, you have a role to play if you're in leadership role, but whenever you can, you spend more time. If you just did these two things, I think they'll be champions.
So raising champions, is there a formula? What's the last word from Manisha Pattu, who happens to be working with our young athletes to make sure they reach where they deserve to?
Well, I think that, I really, really believe in one quote, and I know that Nike is famous for just do it, but one of their better quotes is that greatness is not born, it is trained. And that is what I live by for each and every one of the kids who are part of my life, and not just my own kid. Manav will tell you that I devote as much emotion and kind of work into the other, trying to get these other kids going along. So it is important to keep training. It is a process. It is a long journey to the top, and so you got to be ready for the kind of the long haul, and you have to keep plugging away. So I do believe that if a kid can use sport as a passion, it is the way forward.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank all our panelists for being with us for the Study School Stay Connected and Learn series. Raising Champions, is there a formula? We're going to be back next time with yet another episode of interesting conversation about raising kids. And on that note, thank you and see you again. Please follow us on Instagram. Thank you to BW Education for being our co-hosts, and enjoy the rest of your day.